Hey everybody, this is Lisa Harper, and you're listening to the Not Ready Yet, Curating Conversations for the Aging Journey podcast. This is the show that changes the conversations we have with our loved ones about aging and life decisions. Let's have more honest conversations where we speak the quiet parts of life out loud. Today's conversation is all about brain health and what we can do to support how our minds and bodies age. I'm joined by Dr. David Ajibade, a physician, brain health educator, and the founder of the Brain and Body Foundation. For more than 2 decades, Dr. David has been studying how the brain and body work together and helping people around the world better understand cognitive health, dementia, and ways to protect brain function across the lifespan. He has received multiple prestigious awards, including being named one of the most influential leaders in health and wellness to watch. Dr. David is also a global health advocate and host of one of Africa's most widely viewed health television programs, where he shares practical insights to help people take charge of their health. So thank you so much, Dr. David, for being here. Why brain health? How did this become your path in life and your purpose?
Great question. I think this is the first time someone's actually asking me this on an interview. But thank you for having me, Lisa, first of all.
You're so welcome.
I guess I've always been interested in the brain, not just in the brain, but in mental potential, human potential. And obviously, you can't have human potential without a well-functioning brain. I was also very interested in neurosurgery. As a matter of fact, I was planning on being a neurosurgeon. I was inspired by Dr. Ben Carson in medical school, like many people from Africa were, who went to medical school. So everything kind of fit in place. But during my 1-year residency, so in Nigeria, we have like a 1-year, shall we say, we call it housemanship, where you rotate through the 4 major disciplines: pediatrics, OBGYN, surgery, and medicine, internal medicine. And I realized, maybe being always in the surgical theater wasn't the best. So I kind of switched to, not to psychiatry or even to neurology in that sense. I sort of I realized that one of the best ways to help people with brain issues was by finding ways to strengthen, to feed, to nourish, to nurture the brain, and that the brain would take over and do what it needed to do to fix itself. And so that has been a field that I've been really, really fascinated in. It's not, it doesn't have a name for it right now. I guess we are creating it as we're going along. But that's, in a nutshell, that has been my interest. Learning how to optimize the brain by providing it with the resources, the environment, and the tools that it needs to fix itself.
And that's amazing, because I think, and that's something I want everyone to hear, is that to help it fix itself, right? Like whatever damage maybe we've done up until a certain point, like what I'm hearing from you is that we can, if not reverse, but we can maybe pull back some of the severe symptoms and gain something back. It's not like it's a lost cause.
Very true. And it sounds controversial, but yes, you can actually reverse many conditions. Not a few, but many, if you give the brain what it needs.
And so what does the brain need? Because dementia, I heard somebody refer to it as how people used to perceive cancer. It feels like dementia has now stepped into that space in society. And there's a lot of fear around it. And that's why I want to talk about things, because if we have fear around them and we're not ready yet to confront things, it's about getting more information. And so what would you like to share with our audience? Where do we start?
Well, like I said, I think the first and foremost is that people have to realize that dementia is not inevitable, and that there are a lot of things that can and should be done to strengthen your brain, and that you can do a lot to prevent dementia by as much as 70 to 80%. And we all know things happen that you were not prepared for and all that. But the brain, you asked a question about what the brain needs. The brain needs pretty much the same things as the body needs. It just needs it a lot more. And if it's lacking those things, it is more likely to suffer the consequences. The interesting thing about the most parts of the body, the organs and systems of the body, is that they have backup upon backups. And so things like oxygen deprivation may not hurt the muscles permanently or long term, but you deprive the brain of oxygen for 10 seconds. I mean, you might have permanent damage in some parts of the brain. So basically, it is the same basic things. And this is where I feel there's a problem. I mean, I really am concerned with the way they're teaching especially, I mean, I'm in Baltimore, which is like the ground zero stronghold for dementia, but also have some of the top neurologists and experts and researchers. And I was shocked when I first came here. It's like they were telling everybody that you couldn't. I mean, I was hearing. Let me just not say they were telling, but I was hearing people say, "Well, we all know that dementia cannot be reversed or cannot be prevented." And I'm like, that is simply not true. There are many kinds of dementia that can be reversed. Now, if you say Alzheimer's disease cannot be reversed, you may have a point there. But even at that, there's a lot that can be done to reduce, slow down, and even reverse in some cases if you know what you're doing. So the brain needs a lot of things. It needs the right nutrients, obviously. It needs oxygen. It needs good hydration. It needs to be protected. And also, we can go into the specific kinds of nutrients that it needs. That's important too. But it also needs the social. This is huge now. That social connection. We're now beginning to find out that things like loneliness, protracted loneliness, can lead to dementia. Even being outside in the environment and exposing your skin to sunshine, for instance. I know we were talking about skin cancer, but still, there are some things that you must get from the rays of the sun that you cannot get in any other way that are extremely important to the brain. So the whole gamut of things that we can talk about. I'll let you take the lead on that.
Okay, yeah, and I know you mentioned dementia, and I think just for the listener's sake, dementia is an umbrella term.
Yes.
And so underneath that are the categories of, I think the three leading are, and I'm not the expert, Alzheimer's, vascular, and Lewy bodies. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
And so I want people to understand dementia is an umbrella term of neurological conditions. And so when you had, just to back up, when you had said Alzheimer's, that may be correct. There are other ones. And I know with vascular, I think there was a statistic that I saw about blood vessels and like how we protect our blood vessels. And you're talking about how do we protect our brain? And so when you back up from the brain and start to think of how everything is wired, for lack of a better term, the blood vessels are immediately part of that service provider in the cells. And, I always talk about how our cells talk to each other and to reduce inflammation. So I'm sure there's a lot right there, because I think that if people understand, just how things develop over time, these aren't things that are happening in a moment. It's not like a sudden event. What out of those would you like to dive into?
Good question. Well, I can start by talking about my framework when I'm teaching. If I had 30 to 45 minutes, I have a talk called Keeping Your Marbles, where I highlight three main things that you need to understand to prevent dementia, or three main things that you need to do. And this grew out of my work with the Black community. Initially, I was really focused on the Black community because we are like twice as likely to have dementia as whites are. And I just did not see much focus on the reasons why this was so. And the more and I was at that time I was volunteering with the Alzheimer's Association, and they were sending me everywhere. And so it was a huge opportunity to really get feedback and interact with the community and really see where their heads were at and why certain things were happening. And so I came up with three things, just so I can cut to the chase. Three things. One, to prevent dementia, you've got to, number one, know what harms your brain and avoid it. Number two, know what helps your brain and embrace it. And number three, know your numbers. In other words, know which tests to run and when to run them, so that you can have an objective measurement, objective view on how you're doing. Because everybody can say, well, we're doing everything we can to protect our brains, or we're doing everything to protect our blood vessels. But unless you have an objective way and to know what tests to ask for, because I guarantee you, unfortunately, most healthcare professionals do not know what tests to run, especially blood tests, to get a decent overview of how your brain is doing. So those are three things. That's the framework I use, and obviously there's a whole lot that goes into each of these, and then we can just dig in deep depending on what you think.
Yeah, I mean, out of those, if somebody, you're saying that if we went to our doctors and just said we want to be tested or we want to get these markers done, we have to know what to ask for, is what you're saying, pretty much.
They're probably not going to just no. Yeah, you would have to ask for them yourself.
Okay. Is there one that you can give an example of?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
About seven tests that I say you should run: your vitamin D levels, your vitamin B12 levels, your homocysteine levels, then the hormonal profile, especially the sex hormones, so estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, plus your thyroid hormones, because these are all markers of energy and how much energy is being produced by the brain. Protection, the sex hormones do a lot with regards to protection of the brain cells, and they do a lot. Estrogen in particular does a lot with regards to the synaptic transmission and how effective those connections are. And then what are the others? Tests for inflammation would be another one. So you can maybe the CRP, C-reactive protein is a nice surrogate to test for. I hope I haven't missed anything out. CRP test, and then of course your glucose levels, fasting blood glucose, but also fasting insulin. And this is one test that doctors almost never do, but it's very different from fasting glucose.
Okay. How is it different?
Well, glucose is a measure of how much glucose is in your blood. Insulin is a measure of how much insulin is in your blood. Many times, insulin levels rise significantly, and yet your blood glucose levels may be perfect and normal. And there's a problem with high insulin levels. High insulin levels, have you heard of insulin resistance before?
Absolutely. Hmm.
Okay, so it means that the cells of your body are not responding to insulin, and therefore insulin is not working well enough to drive glucose into the cells. All right. Now, what happens is that over time, pancreas is produced. Once blood sugar levels rise, the pancreas produces insulin to drive the blood sugar levels low. What we're finding out is that more in some people with insulin resistance, they have much higher insulin levels because they're doing everything they can to push. The pancreas is doing everything it can to push the blood glucose levels down. So it sacrifices, in other words, high insulin levels for the sake of keeping blood sugar levels low. Now you may think that's a good thing. We now know that those high insulin levels can wreak havoc on your body, causing metabolic disturbances, causing high blood pressure, causing inflammation all over the body, fat storage, but most importantly, it affects the brain in ways that can be very damaging to the brain. Insulin levels.
Wow. So it sounds like the pancreas is dumping the insulin trying to solve a problem that it can't because it's non-resistant. It's not receiving the information.
The cells of the
And
body are
so
not
it just
responding.
keeps trying, meanwhile overloading on the insulin side.
Correct.
Interesting. People want to have like one answer for one thing. Like, how do I solve this? Well, you do this. This is not that. And I think, I think more and more we're seeing our health and our whole health as the totality of systems and how everything communicates and works together and not
100%.
isolate. Is that, and I know I feel like that's your passion too, on how you even have named things, the brain and the body, like they're together. Everything comes together. You talk about all the systems. So that's pretty fascinating to just be able to go, to equip people with the proper tests to help start to track things, right? Because we're all individual and have to have our own numbers to start with. That's our baseline. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I like that you point out this whole thing that we do, because the reason why we are so effective at treating things like dementia and autism, because in the Brain and Body Foundation, we treat brain disorders, everything from autism to Alzheimer's disease, so the whole gamut. And the whole reason why we're so successful and effective at this is because we're like you said, we treat things, we go back and look at the root causes, how the body works, what are the things that are causing the body not to work, and what we can do to help the body fix itself. And we found out that the brain is dependent on so many other organs and systems in the body that if you neglect those organs and systems and just go straight to the brain to fix the brain problems, you are fighting a losing battle. You might as well be fighting with one hand behind your back, blindfolded, and one foot shot and cut off. You're just not going to make it. You are going to fail over and over and over again. And that's why so many treatments for mental health conditions and brain conditions fail, because they tend to neglect all these other factors.
And in one of your talks, I heard you address the gut health as one of those. That it's a losing battle if we don't get control over our gut health. Is that correct?
That's right. The gut, the digestive system, especially especially the colon and later parts of the small intestine. I mean, you would think about the colon, oh, well, who cares? That's where the poop is made, right? Am I allowed to say poop?
You're allowed to say poop.
That's where the number two is made. How about
Yeah,
that?
okay. We understand both.
Okay, so people don't realize that there's a huge amount, what is known as the microbiome, the bacteria, viruses, and other bugs that we would consider yucky, right? The ick factor that are extremely important. Communication with the brain cells and extremely important for the creation of certain chemicals that the brain must have. A perfect example is serotonin, which is one of the top selling drugs of all time. Is based on the principle of serotonin, increasing serotonin availability to treat depression in the brain. Well, what we've just found out is that 95% of that serotonin is actually made in the gut, in the digestive system. All right. Same thing with dopamine. Maybe not as much, but about 45 to 50% of dopamine is made in the gut. Parkinson's disease, motivation, and so on. Those are what dopamine is involved in or is implicated in. And so, if we neglect another thing, 80% of your immune system. Some people say 70%, others say 80% of your immune system is in the gut, and most of it is in that colon. So when people say that, or they tend to not to think about the gut as much as they should. I mean, again, you're fighting a losing battle. This is especially important in things like autism, but also quite important in things like dementia and Parkinson's and Alzheimer's disease. So what we do is that we also, part of our treatment approach to dementia is to treat the gut as well, to take care of the gut, because if you don't do that, you're just not going to make much progress.
Okay. Yeah, and that's the good bacteria and having things balanced, and people look for some kind of prescription, but a lot of things are solved in our food. Is that a safe statement to make? I think you call them the laws of life. You have this supporting cast of things that are supporting the brain.
Yeah.
What's so important about nutrition, the food we're eating, and how, I mean, it just starts there, right?
Right. I think it's a great question, and kudos to you. You've done your homework.
Well, I am a natural curious human. I've experienced loss with dementia in my family, vascular mainly. And so things have always been very curious to me. And I joke and say I feel like I'm a duplicate of my dad, who's no longer here, but we have like literally the same vertebrae like that have been affected with bulging discs and my knees, and he's had intestinal stuff. And I'm like, I am my dad. And so I can watch what has happened with him. And he did have vascular dementia. I'm a curious human and I want information. And I try to think of my environment as the biggest thing that I can solve, that I can control. And so, you know, what are those choices I'm making on a daily basis that are setting me up? Mm-hmm. As we live longer, I think most of us want to live longer and healthier and stay active. Yeah. It's just not about how long I can live. It's about what's that quality in it too.
Right. It's really good. Really good. Yeah, that's amazing. So you were asking about nutrition specifically?
There's so much out there. Don't eat this, don't do this, don't eat this at this time of day. And I want somebody to give us clarity.
Okay, so let me quickly address that and now go into laws of life. In terms of food, I would say there are four or five main things. I'm not a stickler for any kind of diet, although I do see some of what influences what I tell people to eat. I pull from different kinds of diet, like the carnivore diet. Yeah, but if you're thinking about what your brain needs, especially after the age of 50, your brain needs a lot more protein and a lot of healthy fats. I think we're beginning to come around. Red meat used to be demonized. Lisa, do you know what the most nutrient-dense food on the planet is?
Well, with the way you prefaced it, I'm going to guess beef.
That is correct.
Wow.
It's a tie between beef and I think beef liver too is really up there as well. And then of course your eggs have a high content of. I mean, it's probably the most complete food. I mean, I was doing this thing with back and forth with ChatGPT, and it was choosing some other one leafy green like that, and I got upset, so I wrote back a stinker and I said, you know that is not true. clearly ChatGPT had been trained on vegetarian information, and so it came when I kicked back, well, when I what's the word now? What's the expression? When you react, and then anyway, I challenged it, and it said, "Oh yeah, you're right. Red meat is number one, nutrient dense by far, more than chicken, more than goats, more than anything else." In fact, I know of someone in Phoenix. He runs one of these assisted living memory care homes. No, more of assisted living. He took away all the things from his clients, and they wanted to kill him. And he gave them straight steaks 3 times a day. Many of them recovered from their dementia just on red meat. Because red meat has, like I said, nutrient dense. It has the whole bunch of the nutrients that your brain needs, including the B vitamins, the zinc, the magnesium, and probably not as much magnesium, but a whole bunch of things that the brain needs. So I would say you need more protein. If you can get enough from plants, well, good luck. And number 2, you need more fiber, because fiber feeds the good bacteria in your guts and starves the bad bacteria. And then you want to stay away from soft drinks. You want to reduce your alcohol, but those sugary beverages are a killer. So you want to stay away from those. And what was the fourth one again? So the red meat also helps to feed your muscles as well. Especially women tend to lose muscle mass, and you got to probably work a little harder to maintain that muscle mass, and you need protein to build up that muscle mass. And then the fourth thing is that you need something for your cardiovascular. So you need to eat for your brain, you need to eat for your guts, you need to eat for your muscles and your bones, and then you need to eat for your cardiovascular health. And that's where the good nutrients, like some vegetables, can be very helpful. But I realize too that you don't get enough of the nutrients really from diet alone. Anyone who just insists on saying you can, and doctors are guilty of this in my opinion, they say, well, you don't need to take supplements, you can just get everything you need from a balanced diet. That is not true. That's absolutely not true. A perfect example is vitamin D. Vitamin D is probably, there's an Alzheimer's study that said that you can reduce your risk of dementia specifically by taking vitamin D supplements. You can reduce your risk by as much as 40% if you take vitamin D supplements. Most people haven't heard of it, but it's right there on their websites.
Vitamin D.
Clear study, yes. And guess what? For women, it goes as high as 50% if women supplemented.
Well, there's something right there. Wow. Vitamin D.
Why don't you know this? Why doesn't everybody know it?
I know. And that's the things. And you said D3, correct? Like the specific.
Correct.
Okay. Because I know just as far as the complex and all those, I've been taking a vitamin B as in boy ever since probably I was in my 20s. But now I'm going to focus on vitamin D. And that brings up a question too and I know we're not here I don't want to say good, bad, or buy this, don't buy this. As far as supplements go, is there any high level source out there to know what the quality is within? Or how do we find research to know that what supplement we're buying actually has, the thing we think is in it?
Great question. And there are lots of scams out there. There are a few third-party testers that tend to be of good repute, so they can help with that. The way I learned this, Lisa, is really almost 20 years ago. We started doing webinars. This was before Zoom was. I would invite all these experts, all these inventors, and these experts in their different fields who had come up with some super duper supplement or nutraceutical, and I would have them come speak, and then I would learn from them. So we would have people log in from around the world, and they would talk about their discovery and how it helps in the brain and the human body and all that. So when I went back to Nigeria, I basically started running into all these kids with these different brain problems. And then that's when I remembered, oh, well, this here talked about this. Let me call him and find out if he has any extra to send our way. And then he would send them over, and then we would treat these kids free of charge with these nutrients. And then we just saw amazing results from it. So that's really how we started. That's how we learned which was which, right? Because we already had the experts themselves, the developers or the actual scientists who formulated these things come talk about them. So we were able to get it directly from them. Now, after that, started having such. I actually had to search for different things as well. Some I got from Amazon, even from Nigeria. I'd buy them over. So there were some that worked, others did not. So we had a lot of trial and error. But I think for many things, we've come to realize and find out which ones work. And thank God for the kids too. They helped us learn which ones worked and which ones did not.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. You were getting it straight from the source, not from
Yeah.
aisle 10, in
Correct.
the grocery store.
Correct.
But and so you used a word that I want to make sure our audience understands. What is nutraceutical?
Yes. So we know what a pharmaceutical is and we know what a supplement is. A nutraceutical is in between. So they're nutrients, but made the way a pharmaceutical would be made. So it has similar scientific rigor in the development. So I like to you say that there are supplements, nutraceuticals are supplement on steroids. They are very high powered supplements that are very targeted for the most part. So there are nutraceuticals that fix gut problems. There are nutraceuticals that fix brain problems. There are nutraceuticals that fix lung problems, for instance. So those
Oh.
are kind of like the idea of what nutraceuticals are.
So would it be like kind of like a combination or a cocktail of different things that is meant to address something specific? It's a
Yes.
complex version of a supplement that's been pre-packaged for you.
Yeah, so they're
Okay.
engineered. I mean, they're still nutrients for the most part, but they're engineered in such a way that they take extracts. Then they use modern technology to preserve, freeze dry, whatever it is, and then find a way to synergize it with another nutrient from another plant or animal and have them all work together and be bioavailable and to work, like I said, to fix specific problems in the body.
Yeah. And I know one thing that I've learned in research is that sometimes it takes a combination because if you're trying to treat something or take something and your body doesn't have the part of the piece that actually absorbs it,
Yes.
then you're just everything's washing away and you're really not getting any benefit from it. So it's kind of understanding down to the root of how do I know when I take this just D3 for example, I'll say that what do I need under those underlying things to help my
Yes.
body absorb it.
Yeah. So think pharmaceuticals, think nutrients. So
Yeah, I,
nutraceuticals.
that makes sense. There's so many things I know out there, and we're talking more about, changes we can make. I say take agency over your life, be the narrator of your story. And one thing that I wanted to touch upon that we necessarily don't have control over, but I feel I'm hearing it more, no pun intended, in the dementia space is hearing. And losing our hearing, people are saying now to really take that seriously on the effect that it has on the brain processing. Could you go into anything about hearing?
Yeah, sure. So hearing loss significantly increases your risk for dementia. And I mean, they haven't hit on upon a specific reason. Most of it is still theory. They're hypothesizing, big word, about why that is so. So one of the things is hearing loss. I mean, hearing requires a lot of brain energy. So lots of different parts of the brain have to work together. So you speak words, the brain has to decipher, create images, what those words mean, put them together, make it something that the different brain regions can interpret and act upon. So there's a whole bunch involved in that. Once you start having trouble hearing, it seems like the brain has to work extra hard to do those things I just mentioned, and becomes harder and harder. And so that takes away from the energy that is needed to run the brain as a whole. Now, one of the things we probably, I don't know if we have time to get into it, but one of the things that we know for a fact that causes dementia is this drop in overall energy available to run the brain. The brain requires 10 units of energy, for instance, and it only gets about 5. It's going to have to prioritize. There are some parts that are going to have to suffer. It's going to triage, that's the word. We're going to have to take away from parts that need it to parts that need it even more. For instance, parts that require regulation of breathing, for instance, or parts that require regulation of digestion, which are survival mechanisms. So what happens with dementia is that parts that take up the most energy are the parts that suffer, because the brain has to take the energy, the energy quota from those high demand areas and push that energy towards survival mechanisms, like I've already discussed. That's why the first few things to be lost in dementia are things like memory, complex calculations, judgment, pulse control. These are all things that require a lot of energy, a lot of processing power. They are also the parts that make us most human, because they're the parts that have to do with the things that make us an advanced species, so to speak. One of the things that tends to happen with hearing loss is that brain starts to work extra hard, and therefore energy demand becomes higher in that area and takes away from the parts of the brain that it requires. Another thing that we see with hearing loss is isolation, social isolation. People get embarrassed. They don't want to be seen as not being able to hear you properly, and so when they isolate, they're not interacting with especially with the older age group, they're not interacting with their peers much. We know that isolation can eventually result in dementia.
Yeah, isolation, I do believe it's an epidemic. One that always touches my heartstrings. I give people permission. This isn't the time to fix it. It's the time to understand it.
Yes.
So that you can walk beside them. So, well, Dr. David, I know we're wrapping up here. Is there anything else that you would like the audience to know before we leave?
No, this has been great. Again, there's a lot that can be done, and we're discovered there are many doctors in this country. Of course, we're doing it in Nigeria and other countries where there's a lot you can do to not just slow the deterioration that is seen in dementia, but also reverse and regain some function. And so there's a lot of hope is what I'm trying to say.
And that's wonderful. So I have a lightning round that I call Ready or Not. Would you be willing to ask a couple questions in quick fashion?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. The first question is, if you were to be able to choose between a front porch and a back deck of a home, which one is your choice? Front porch or back deck?
Back deck.
Back deck? So back deck it is. What's a phrase or a piece of industry jargon that people outside your field, they don't understand? And what does it really mean?
Well, nutraceuticals is one. So nutraceutical, like we said already, it's a mix between a supplement and a pharmaceutical. So nutraceutical is one.
If every listener did just one thing at the age of 55 to make life easier when they're 75, what would it be?
I would say by taking vitamin D3.
Okay.
That's probably everybody should be taking. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so that called out vitamin D3 to the top of the list. Okay.
Yeah, because it affects so many things. It affects brain health, it affects gut health, it affects bone health, it affects muscle health, and all that thing. And it's also so cheap too. So it's one of those things that have the greatest leverage and so easy to do with a wide safety margin as well.
Well, Dr. David, I just want to thank you so much for being here with us and for sharing with our listeners. I mean, an absolute fraction of the amount of information that you're able to give people. What do you want to let people know? I know you have some programming. We'll have notes in the resource list here on the podcast, but is there anything you want to draw people's attention to that you offer?
Yeah, so we do a live stream every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. I would love to have you on it, Lisa, where we address things that have to do with dementia, the senior aging community, what people need to know, whether it's financial, legal, the caregiving aspects, what people need to, like you said, how to understand what's going on with their loved one with dementia and how to best handle it without you getting all stressed out yourself. So I think there's a huge gap for all that. And then we mentioned that we're having a course coming up where we have about 7-8 modules where we address many of the things I just touch on in my speeches or in these webinars or in these interviews. I go into them in much greater detail with lots of diagrams and pictures for people to look at. So I think that would be a great thing too. There is a fee to it, yes, but yes, they can.
It's not on a specific date or anything.
No. It's at your own pace.
Okay, perfect. The website will be in the show notes. And anything else you want to share with the audience? Any other resources or ways to find you?
Yeah, sure. Dr. David, Dr. David, my last name Ajibade is with the website, like you said. And then it's available on all the social media platforms in that name. And then, of course, Brain and Body Foundation also has all the social media platforms it's attached to it.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you again, Dr. David. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate your time. And I think this has been a wealth of information for people and hopefully got rid of some stigma around dementia and gives people some encouragement. Thanks for joining me on Not Ready Yet, curating conversations for the aging journey. If something in this episode gave you clarity or the courage to start an important conversation, or offered a new way to look at things, I hope you'll share it with someone who might need the same encouragement. Remember, navigating aging isn't something we have to do alone or in crisis. With love, logic, and the right tools, we can face what's next with confidence and connection. Be sure to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling generous, leave a review. It helps others find the show. And just a quick note, the information shared on this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for medical, psychiatric, legal, or other professional advice. Always consult a qualified professional for guidance tailored to your unique situation. This is Lisa Harper, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.